Namaste and welcome to this immersive audio experience. Today, we embark on a journey into the profound teachings of the Buddha and his Dhamma written by Dr. B.R.Ambedkar. As we delve into the pages of wisdom, let the words guide you through the path of enlightenment, compassion, and self-discovery. Whether you are a seasoned practitioner or new to the teachings, this audiobook promises a meditative voyage through the profound insights of the Buddha. Without further ado, let us commence our exploration of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Indications of a growth in the volume of interest in Buddhism are noticeable in some sections of the Indian people. Along with it, there is naturally a growing demand for a clear and consistent statement of the life and teachings of the Buddha. Anyone who is not a Buddhist finds it extremely difficult to present the life and teachings of the Buddha in a manner which would make it a consistent whole. Depending on the Nikayas, not only the presentation of a consistent story of the life of the Buddha becomes a difficult thing, and the presentation of some parts of his teachings becomes much more so. Indeed, it would not be an exaggeration to say that of all the founders of religions in the world, the presentation of the life and teachings of the founder of Buddhism presents a problem which is quite puzzling if not baffling. Is it not necessary that these problems should be solved and the path for the understanding of Buddhism be made clear? Is it not time that those who are Buddhists should take up these problems at least for general discussion and throw what light they can on these problems? With a view to raise a discussion on these problems, I propose to set them out here. The first problem relates to the main event in the life of the Buddha, namely, Parivraja. Why did the Buddha take Parivraja? The traditional answer is that he took Parivraja because he saw a dead person, a sick person, and an old person. This answer is absurd on the face of it. The Buddha took Parivraja at the age of 29. If he took Parivraja as a result of these three sights, how is it he did not see these three sights earlier? These are common events occurring by hundreds, and the Buddha could not have failed to come across them earlier. It is impossible to accept the traditional explanation that this was the first time he saw them. The explanation is not plausible and does not appeal to reason. But if this is not the answer to the question, what is the real answer? The second problem is created by the four Aryan truths. Do they form part of the original teachings of the Buddha? This formula cuts at the root of Buddhism. If life is sorrow, death is sorrow, and rebirth is sorrow, then there is an end of everything. Neither religion nor philosophy can help a man to achieve happiness in the world. If there is no escape from sorrow, then what can religion do? What can Buddha do to relieve man from such sorrow which is ever there in birth itself? The four Aryan truths are a great stumbling block in the way of non-Buddhists accepting the gospel of Buddhism. For the four Aryan truths deny hope to man. The four Aryan truths make the gospel of the Buddha a gospel of pessimism. Do they form part of the original gospel, or are they a later accretion by the monks? The third problem relates to the doctrines of soul, of karma and rebirth. The Buddha denied the existence of the soul. But he is also said to have affirmed the doctrine of karma and rebirth. At once a question arises. If there is no soul, how can there be karma? If there is no soul, how can there be rebirth? These are baffling questions. In what sense did the Buddha use the words karma and rebirth? Did he use them in a different sense than the sense in which they were used by the Brahmins of his day? If so, in what sense? Did he use them in the same sense in which the Brahmins used them? If so, is there not a terrible contradiction between the denial of the soul and the affirmation of karma and rebirth? This contradiction needs to be resolved. The fourth problem relates to the bhikkhu. What was the object of the Buddha in creating the bhikkhu? Was the object to create a perfect man? Or was his object to create a social servant devoting his life to service of the people and being their friend, guide and philosopher? This is a very real question. On it depends the future of Buddhism. If the bhikkhu is only a perfect man, he is of no use to the propagation of Buddhism, because though a perfect man, he is a selfish man. If, on the other hand, he is a social servant, he may prove to be the hope of Buddhism. This question must be decided not so much in the interest of doctrinal consistency but in the interest of the future of Buddhism. If I may say so, the pages of the Journal of the Mahabodhi Society make, to me at any rate, dull reading. This is not because the material presented is not interesting and instructive. The dullness is due to the fact that it seems to fall upon a passive set of readers. After reading an article, one likes to know what the reader of the journal has to say about it. But the reader never gives out his reaction. This silence on the part of the reader is a great discouragement to the writer. I hope my questions will excite the readers to come and make their contribution to their solution. From time to time, men find themselves forced to reconsider current and inherited beliefs and ideas to gain some harmony between present and past experience and to reach a position which shall satisfy the demands of feeling and reflection and give confidence for facing the future. If, at the present day, religion, as a subject of critical or scientific inquiry of both practical and theoretical significance, has attracted increasing attention, this can be ascribed to a. The rapid progress of scientific knowledge and thought, b. the deeper intellectual interest in the subject, c. the widespread tendencies in all parts of the world to reform or reconstruct religion, or even to replace it by some body of thought, more rational and scientific or less superstitious. And d. the effect of social, political, and international events of a sort which, in the past, have both influenced and been influenced by religion. Whenever the ethical or moral value of activities or conditions is questioned, the value of religion is involved, and all deep-stirring experiences invariably compel a reconsideration of the most fundamental ideas, whether they are explicitly religious or not. Ultimately, there arise problems of justice, human destiny, God, and the universe, and these in turn involve problems of the relation between religious and other ideas, the validity of ordinary knowledge, and practicable conceptions of experience and reality. Tiskula 1. Going back to the 6th century BC, northern India did not form a single sovereign state. 2. The country was divided into many states, some large, some small. Of these, some were monarchical and some non-monarchical. 3. The monarchical states were altogether 16 in number. They were known by the name of Anga, Magad, Kashi, Kosala, Vriji, Malla, Chedi, Vatsa, Kuru, Panchala, Matsya, Saursena, Asmaka, Avanti, Gandhara and Kambhoja. 4. The non-monarchical states were those of the Sakyas of Kapilvatsu, the Mallas of Pava and Kushinara, the Lichvis of Vaishali, the Videhas of Mithila, the Koliyas of Ramgam, the Bulis of Allakapa, the Kalingas of Resputta, the Mauryas of Pipfalvana and the Bhaggas with their capital on Sumsumara hill. 5. The monarchical states were known as Janpada and the non-monarchical as Sangh or Gana. 6. Not much is known about the nature of the polity of the Sakyas of Kapilvatsu, whether it was republican or oligarchic. 7. This much, however, is definitely known, that there were many ruling families in the Republic of the Sakyas and that they ruled in turns. 8. The head of the ruling family was known as Raja. 9. At the time of the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, it was the turn of Suddhodana to be the Raja. 10. The Sakya state was situated in the northeast corner of India. It was an independent state. But at a later stage, the king of Kosala had succeeded in establishing his paramountcy over it. 11. The result of this paramountcy was that the Sakya state could not exercise certain sovereign powers without the sanction of the king of Kosala. 12. Of the kingdoms then in existence, Kosala was a powerful kingdom. So was the kingdom of Magad. Pasnedi, king of Kosala and Bimbisara, king of Magad, were the contemporaries of Siddhartha. Gautama. 2. His ancestry. 1. The capital of the Sakyas was the city called Kapilavatsu, perhaps after the name of the great rationalist Kapila. 2. There lived in Kapilvastu a Sakya by name Jayasena. Sinhu was his son. Sinhu was married to Kachkana. Sinhu had 5 sons, Suddhodana, Dhotodana, Sakkodana, Suklodana and Amitodana. Besides 5 sons, Sinhu had 2 daughters, Amita and Pamita. 3. The Gotra of the family was Aditya. 4. Suddhodana was married to Mahamaya. Her father's name was Anjana and mother's Sulakshana. Anjana was a Kolya and was residing in the village called Devdaha. 5. Suddhodana was a man of great military prowess. When Suddhodana had shown his martial powers, he was allowed to take a second wife and he chose Mahaprajpati. She was the elder sister of Mahamaya. 6. Suddhodana was a wealthy person. The lands he held were very extensive and the retinue under him was very large. He employed, it is said, 1,000 plows to till the land he owned. 7. He lived quite a luxurious life and had many palaces. 3. His birth. 1. To Suddhodana was born Siddhartha Gautama and this was the manner of Gautama's birth. 2. It was a custom among the Sakyas to observe an annual midsummer festival which fell in the month of Ashad. It was celebrated by all the Sakyas throughout the state and also by the members of the ruling family. 3. It was the usual practice to celebrate the festival for 7 days. 4. On one occasion Mahamaya decided to observe the festival with gaiety, with splendor, with flowers, with perfume but without drinking intoxicants. 5. On the 7th day she rose early, bathed in scented water, bestowed a gift of 400,000 pieces of money as alms, adorned herself with all precious ornaments, ate choicest food, took upon herself the fast day vows, and entered the splendidly adorned royal bedchamber to sleep. 6. That night Suddhodana and Mahamaya came together and Mahamaya conceived. Lying on the royal bed she fell asleep. While asleep she had a dream. 7. In her dreams she saw that the 4 world guardians raised her as she was sleeping on her bed and carried her to the tableland of the Himalayas, placed her under a great sal tree and stood on one side. 8. The wives of the 4 world guardians then approached and took her to the lake Mansarovar. 9. They bathed her, robed her in a dress, anointed her with perfumes and decked her with flowers in a manner fit to meet some divinity. 10. Then a bodhisattva by name Sumedha appeared before her saying, I have decided to take my last and final birth on this earth. Will you consent to be my mother? She said, yes, with great pleasure. At this moment Mahamaya awoke. 11. Next morning Mahamaya told her dream to Suddhodana. Not knowing how to interpret the dream, Suddhodana summoned 8 Brahmins who were most famous in divination. 12. They were Rama, Ghaga, Lakkana, Manti, Yanna, Suima, Subhoga and Sudatta and prepared for them a befitting reception. 13. He caused the ground to be strewn with festive flowers and prepared high seats for them. 14. He filled the bowls of the Brahmans with gold and silver and fed them on cooked ghee, honey, sugar and excellent rice and milk. He also gave them other gifts such as new clothes and tawny cows. 15. When the Brahmans were propitiated, Suddhodana related to them the dream Mahamaya had and said, "Tell me what it means." 16. The Brahmans said, "Be not anxious. You will have a son, and if he leads a householder's life he will become a universal monarch, and if he leaves his home and goes forth into a homeless state, and becomes a sannyasi, he will become a Buddha, a dispeller of illusions in the world." 17. Bearing the Bodhisatta in her womb like oil in a vessel for 10 lunar months, Mahamaya, as her time of delivery was coming nearer, desired to go to her parents' home for delivery. Addressing her husband, she said, "I wish to go to Devdaha, the city of my father." 18. "Thou knowest that thy wishes will be done," replied Suddhodana. Having seated her in a golden palanquin borne by couriers, he sent her forth with a great retinue to her father's house. 19. Mahamaya, on her way to Devdaha, had to pass through a pleasure grove of sal trees and other trees, flowering and non-flowering. It was known as the Lumbini Grove. 20. As the palanquin was passing through it, the whole Lumbini Grove seemed like the heavenly Sittalta Grove or like a banqueting pavilion adorned for a mighty king. 21. From the roots to the tips of the branches the trees were loaded with fruits, flowers and numberless bees of the fine colors, uttering curious sounds, and flocks of various kinds of birds, singing sweet melodies. 22. Witnessing the scene, there arose a desire in the heart of Mahamaya for halting and sporting therein for a while. Accordingly she told the couriers to take her in the sal grove and wait there. 23. Mahamaya alighted from her palanquin and walked up to the foot of a royal sal tree. A pleasant wind, not too strong, was blowing and thebufs of the trees were heaving up and down and Mahamaya felt like catching one of them. 24. Luckily one of the boughs heaved down sufficiently low to enable her to catch it. So she rose on her toes and caught the bough. Immediately she was lifted up by its upward movement, and being shaken, she felt the pangs of childbirth. While holding the branch of the sal tree she was delivered of a son in a standing position. 25. The child was born in the year 563 BC on the Vaishakha Purnima day. 26. Suddhodana and Mahamaya were married for a long time. But they had no issue. Ultimately, when a son was born to them, his birth was celebrated with great rejoicing, with great pomp and ceremony by Suddhodana and his family and also by the Sakyas. 27. At the time of the birth of the child, it was the turn of Suddhodana to be the ruler of Kapilavatsu and as such was in the enjoyment of the title of Raja. Naturally, the boy was called Prince. 4. Visit by Asita. 1. At the moment when the child was born there dwelt on the Himalayas a great sage named Asita. 2. Asita heard that the gods over the space of the sky were shouting the word Buddha and making it resound. He beheld them waving their garments and coursing hither and thither in delight. He thought, what if I were to go and find out the land in which he was born? 3. Surveying with his divine eyes the whole of the Jambudvipa, Asita saw that a boy was born in the house of Suddhodana shining with all brilliance and that it was over his birth that the gods were excited. 4. So the great sage Asita with his nephew Nardatta rose up and came to the abode of Raja Suddhodana and stood at the door of his palace. 5. Now Asita, the sage, saw that at the door of Suddhodana's palace many 100,000 beings had assembled. So he approached the doorkeeper and said, Go, man, inform the Raja that a sage is standing at the door. 6. Then the doorkeeper approached Suddhodana and with clasped hands said, Know, O Raja, that an aged sage, old and advanced in years, stands at the door and says that he desires to see you. 7. The king prepared a seat for Asita and said to the doorkeeper, "Let the sage enter." So coming out of the palace, the doorkeeper said to Asita, "Please go in." 8. Now Asita approached King Suddhodana and, standing in front of him, said, "Victory, victory, O Raja, may you live long and rule thy kingdom righteously." 9. Then Suddhodana, in reverence to Asita, fell at his feet and offered him the seat, and seeing him seated in comfort, Suddhodana said, "I do not remember to have seen thee before this, O sage. With what purpose hast thou come hither? What is the cause?" 10. Thereupon Asita said to Suddhodana, "A son is born to thee, O Raja. Desiring to see him, have I come." 11. Suddhodana said, "The boy is asleep, O sage. Will you wait for a while?" The sage said, "Not long, O king. Do such great beings sleep? Such good beings are by nature wakeful." 12. Then did the child, out of compassion for Asita, the great sage, make a sign of awaking. 13. Seeing that the child had become awake, Suddhodana took the boy firmly in both hands and brought him into the presence of the sage. 14. Asita, observing the child, beheld that it was endowed with the 32 marks of a great man and adorned with the 80 minor marks, his body surpassing that of Sakra, Brahma, and his aura surpassing them 100,000-fold, breathed forth this solemn utterance, "Marvelous, verily, is this person that has appeared in the world," and rising from his seat clasped his hands, fell at his feet, made a rightways circuit round, and taking the child in his own hand stood in contemplation. 15. Asita knew the old well-known prophecy that anyone endowed with the 32 marks of a great man, as Gautama was, has two careers open to him, and no third. If he becomes a householder, he will become a universal monarch. But if he goes forth from the home to a homeless life, he will become a fully enlightened Buddha. 16. Asita was sure that the child would not remain a householder. 17. And looking at the child he wept, and shedding tears, sighed deeply. 18. Suddhodana beheld Asita shedding tears, and sighing deeply. 19. Beholding him thus weeping, the hair of his body rose, and in distress Suddhodana said to Asita, "Why, O sage, dost thou weep and shed tears, and sigh so deeply? Surely, there is no misfortune in store for the child." 20. At this Asita said to the Raja, "O king, I weep not for the sake of the child. There will be no misfortune for him. But I weep for myself." 21. And why? Asked Suddhodana. Asita replied, "I am old, aged, advanced in years, and this boy will without doubt become a Buddha and attain supreme and complete enlightenment, and having done so, will turn the supreme wheel of the doctrine that has not been turned before him by any other being in the world. For the weal and happiness of the world will he teach his doctrine." 22. The religious life, the doctrine that he will proclaim, will be good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, complete in the letter and the spirit, whole and pure. 23. Just as an Audumbara flower at some time and place arises in the world, even so at some time and place, after countless cycles, revered Buddha arise in the world. So also, O Raja, this boy will without doubt obtain supreme, complete enlightenment, and having done so will take countless beings across the ocean of sorrow and misery to a state of happiness. 24. But I shall not see that Buddha. Hence, O Raja, I weep and in sadness I sigh deeply, for I shall not be able to reverence him. 25. The king thereafter offered to the great sage Asita and Nardatta, his nephew, suitable food, and having given him robes made a rightways circuit round him. 26. Thereupon Asita said to Nardatta, his nephew, "When thou shalt hear, Nardatta, that the child has become a Buddha, then go and take refuge in his teachings. This shall be for thy weal and welfare and happiness. So saying, Asita took leave of the Raja and departed for his hermitage. 5. Death of Mahamaya. 1. On the 5th day the ceremony of name-giving took place. The name chosen for the child was Siddharth. His clan name was Gautama. Popularly, therefore, he came to be called Siddharth Gautama. 2. In the midst of rejoicing over the birth and the naming of the child, Mahamaya suddenly fell ill and her illness became very serious. 3. Realizing that her end was near, she called Suddhodana and Prajapati to her bedside and said, I am sure that the prophecy made by Asita about my son will come true. My regret is that I will not live to see it fulfilled. 4. My child will soon be a motherless child. But I am not worried in the least as to whether after me my child will be carefully nursed, properly looked after and brought up in a manner befitting his future. 5. To you, Prajapati, I entrust my child. I have no doubt that you will be to him more than his mother. 6. Now do not be sorry. Permit me to die. God's call has come and his messengers are waiting to take me. So saying, Mahamaya breathed her last. Both Suddhodana and Prajapati were greatly grieved and wept bitterly. 7. Siddharth was only 7 days old when his mother died. 8. Siddharth had a younger brother by name Nanda. He was the son of Suddhodana born to Mahaprajapati. 9. He had also several cousins, Mahanama and Anuruddha, sons of his uncle Suklodan, Ananda, son of his uncle Amitodan, and Devdatta, son of his aunt Amita. Mahanama was older than Siddharth and Ananda was younger. 10. Siddharth grew up in their company. 6. Childhood and education. 1. When Siddharth was able to walk and speak, the elders of the Sakyas assembled and asked Suddhodana that the boy should be taken to the temple of the village goddess Abhya. 2. Suddhodana agreed and asked Mahaprajapati to dress the boy. 3. While she was doing so, the child Siddharth, with a most sweet voice, asked his aunt where he was being taken. On learning that he was being taken to the temple, he smiled. But he went, conforming to the custom of the Sakyas. 4. At the age of 8, Siddharth started his education. 5. Those very 8 Brahmans whom Suddhodana had invited to interpret Mahamaya's dream and who had predicted his future were his first teachers. 6. After they had taught him what they knew, Suddhodana sent for Sabbamitta of distinguished descent and of high lineage in the land of Uddika, a philologist and grammarian, well read in the Vedas, Vedangas and Upanishads. Having poured out water of dedication from a golden vase, Suddhodana handed over the boy to his charge to be taught. He was his second teacher. 7. Under him Gautama mastered all the philosophic systems prevalent in his day. 8. Besides this, he had learned the science of concentration and meditation from one Bhardwaj, a disciple of Alar Kalam, who had his ashram at Kapilavatsu. 7. Early traits. 1. Whenever he went to his father's farm and found no work, he repaired to a quiet place and practiced meditation. 2. While everything for the cultivation of the mind was provided, his education in the military science befitting a Kshatriya was not neglected. 3. For Suddhodana was anxious not to make the mistake of having cultivated the mind of his son at the cost of his manliness. 4. Siddharth was of kindly disposition. He did not like exploitation of man by man. 5. Once he went to his father's farm with some of his friends and saw the laborers ploughing the land, raising buns, cutting trees, etc., dressed in scanty clothes under a hot burning sun. 6. He was greatly moved by the sight. 7. He said to his friends, "Can it be right that one man should exploit another? How can it be right that the laborer should toil and the master should live on the fruits of his labor?" 8. His friends did not know what to say, for they believed in the old philosophy of life that the worker was born to serve and that in serving his master he was only fulfilling his destiny. 9. The Sakyas used to celebrate a festival called Vapramangal. It was a rustic festival performed on the day of sowing. On this day, custom had made it obligatory on every Sakya to do ploughing personally. 10. Siddharth always observed the custom and did engage himself in ploughing. 11. Though a man of learning, he did not despise manual labor. 12. He belonged to a warrior class and had been taught archery and the use of weapons. But he did not like causing unnecessary injury. 13. He refused to join hunting parties. His friends used to say, "Are you afraid of tigers?" He used to retort by saying, "I know you are not going to kill tigers, you are going to kill harmless animals such as deer and rabbits." 14. If not for hunting, come to witness how accurate is the aim of your friends, they said. Even such invitations Siddharth refused, saying, "I do not like to see the killing of innocent animals." 15. Prajapati Gautami was deeply worried over this attitude of Siddharth. 16. She used to argue with him saying, "You have forgotten that you are a Kshatriya and fighting is your duty. The art of fighting can be learned only through hunting, for only by hunting can you learn how to aim accurately. Hunting is a training ground for the warrior class." 17. Siddharth often used to ask Gautami, "But, mother, why should a Kshatriya fight?" And Gautami used to reply, "Because it is his duty." 18. Siddharth was never satisfied by her answer. He used to ask Gautami, "Tell me, how can it be the duty of man to kill man?" Gautami argued, "Such an attitude is good for an ascetic. But Kshatriyas must fight. If they don't, who will protect the kingdom?" 19. But mother, if all Kshatriyas loved one another, would they not be able to protect their kingdom without resort to killing? Gautami had to leave him to his own opinion. 20. He tried to induce his companions to join him in practicing meditation. He taught them the proper pose. He taught them to fix their mind on a subject. He advised them to select such thoughts as, "May I be happy, may my relations be happy, may all living animals be happy." 21. But his friends did not take the matter seriously. They laughed at him. 22. On closing their eyes, they could not concentrate on their subject of meditation. Instead, some saw before their eyes deer for shooting or sweets for eating. 23. His father and his mother did not like his partiality for meditation. They thought it was so contrary to the life of a Kshatriya. 24. Siddharth believed that meditation on right subjects led to development of the spirit of universal love. He justified himself by saying, "When we think of living things, we begin with distinction and discrimination. We separate friends from enemies, we separate animals we rear from human beings. We love friends and domesticated animals, and we hate enemies and wild animals." 25. This dividing line we must overcome, and this we can do when we in our contemplation rise above the limitations of practical life. Such was his reasoning. 26. His childhood was marked by the presence of supreme sense of compassion. 27. Once he went to his father's farm. During recess, he was resting under a tree enjoying the peace and beauty of nature. While so seated, a bird fell from the sky just in front of him. 28. The bird had been shot at by an arrow which had pierced its body and was fluttering about in great agony. 29. Siddharth rushed to the help of the bird. He removed the arrow, dressed its wound, and gave it water to drink. He picked up the bird, came to the place where he was seated and wrapped up the bird in his upper garment and held it next to his chest to give it warmth. 30. Siddharth was wondering who could have shot this innocent bird. Before long there came his cousin Devdatta armed with all the implements of shooting. He told Siddharth that he had shot a bird flying in the sky. The bird was wounded but it flew some distance and fell somewhere there, and asked him if he had seen it. 31. Siddharth replied in the affirmative and showed him the bird, which had by that time completely recovered. 32. Devdatta demanded that the bird be handed over to him. This Siddharth refused to do. A sharp argument ensued between the two. 33. Devdatta argued that he was the owner of the bird because by the rules of the game, he who kills a game becomes the owner of the game. 34. Siddharth denied the validity of the rule. He argued that it is only he who protects that has the right to claim ownership. How can he who wants to kill be the owner? 35. Neither party would yield. The matter was referred to arbitration. The arbitrator upheld the point of view of Siddharth Gautama. 36. Devdatta became his permanent enemy. But Gautama's spirit of compassion was so great that he preferred to save the life of an innocent bird to securing the goodwill of his cousin. 37. Such were the traits of character found in the early life of Siddharth Gautama. 8. Marriage. 1. There was a Sakya by name Dandapani. Yashodhara was his daughter. She was well known for her beauty and for her sila. 2. Yashodhara had reached her 16th year and Dandapani was thinking about her marriage. 3. According to custom, Dandapani sent invitations to young men of all the neighboring countries for the Swayamvar of his daughter. 4. An invitation was also sent to Siddharth Gautama. 5. Siddharth Gautama had completed his 16th year. His parents also were equally anxious to get him married. 6. They asked him to go to the Swayamvar and offer his hand to Yashodhara. He agreed to follow his parents' wishes. 7. From amongst the young men, Yashodhara's choice fell on Siddharth Gautama. 8. Dandapani was not very happy. He felt doubtful about the success of the marriage. 9. Siddharth, he felt, was addicted to the company of saints and sages. He preferred loneliness. How could he be a successful householder? 10. Yashodhara, who was determined to marry none but Siddharth, asked her father whether to be in the company of saints and sages was a crime. She did not think it was. 11. Knowing her daughter's determination to marry no one but Siddharth Gautama, the mother of Yashodhara told Dandapani that he must consent. Dandapani did. 12. The rivals of Gautama were not only disappointed but felt that they were insulted. 13. They wanted that in fairness to them, Yashodhara should have applied some test for her selection. But she did not. 14. For the time being they kept quiet, believing that Dandapani would not allow Yashodhara to choose Siddharth Gautama so that their purpose would be served. 15. But when Dandapani failed, they made bold and demanded that a test of skill in archery be prescribed. Dandapani had to agree. 16. At first Siddharth was not prepared for this. But Channa, his charioteer, pointed out to him what disgrace his refusal would bring upon his father, upon his family and upon Yashodhara. 17. Siddharth Gautama was greatly impressed by this argument and agreed to take part in the contest. 18. The contest began. Each candidate showed his skill in turn. 19. Gautama's turn came last. but his was the highest marksmanship. 20. Thereafter the marriage took place. Both Suddhodana and Dandapani were happy. So was Yeshodhara and Mahaprajpati. 21. After a long term of married life, Yeshodhara gave birth to a son. He was named Rahula.